Hi guys, this is TC Lee on behalf of the Tank Club, and I'm here today to answer one of the biggest questions I'm being asked at the minute. What monster set do I use as a tank? So we're going to have a look at all the tank monster sets that are viable at the moment, and we're going to start off with Bloodspawn. Now Bloodspawn, it's now going to only give you 8 ultimate instead of the 16 that it used to give, so it's quite a big change. It's got a 6% chance to give you that ultimate, so if you're struggling to build up ultimate, you're not required to use anything else, then of course you can use this set to try and build your ultimate faster. It's not something that you really need because it's such a low chance to proc, a 6% chance. When you're getting hit by a lot of enemies, obviously it's going to work better, but in boss fights it's going to be quite slow. It's not going to activate very quickly. You also gain physical and spell resistance, but it can't be relied on, so you can't incorporate that into your build. 3,300 resistances on a 6% chance that's only going to last for 5 seconds. You can't rely on those resistances, and the ultimate gain isn't really that worth it during boss fights mainly. The next set we've got is Bogdan, and this is a healing monster set. Now this is usually used by a healer. It could be used by a tank in 4-man content, so it's going to give a heal for 6 seconds to you and your group. It's going to summon a totem, so especially in fights where you're quite close to your group, it's got quite a good chance, a 20% chance to summon the totem. It's got a 10-second cooldown, but it's got a 6-second duration, so essentially 4 seconds where it won't be active if you were really lucky. So this could be used in 4-man content without a healer, so you've got 3 DDs, 1 tank. You could use this set if your group really needs the heal. Next we've got Chokethorn. This is mostly for the one-piece bonus, so you could incorporate this into a build using the Mythic Items, the Bloodlord's Embrace, for the extra magicka recovery. You could also partner this with another one-piece monster set such as Shadowrend, which will also give the same magicka recovery, or something like Swarm Mother, which is going to give you more max stats, but this is mostly for people that are struggling with their magicka sustain and they want a bit of extra mag recovery. So mostly beginner players, I would say, or in real specific situations where you want that magicka recovery. The next one we've got is Earthgore, and one-piece item is 4% healing done. The 2-piece is basically when you heal yourself and you're under 50% health, you'll proc this and it'll heal you for almost 30k health over 10 seconds, so it's almost 3k per second of healing. Once the duration of this has ended, after the 10 seconds, you've got 10 seconds where it can't be activated, and then it can be reprocced again. So it's got a 20-second cooldown, which means 10 seconds after it's ended, it can be activated again. So this is really nice for things like Cloud Rest. When you get the Baneful Mark in Execute, you can use this every single Baneful Mark. So you can proc it once you get the Baneful Mark, you get the proc of Earthgore, Baneful Mark is ended, and then you wait the duration, the next one comes around about 10 seconds later. So you can use this on cooldown in that particular situation, and it's just a really good healing monster set because you only activate it on yourself if you're using a self heal. You can use it on your group as well. If you use something like Blood Altar, you can use it for your group, but mainly you'll use this as a self heal if you're struggling to stay alive. And because it's so active, it's active for 10 seconds and it's down for 10 seconds, it's got a 50% uptime. It's a very good set for healing yourself if you're struggling to stay alive. So the next set we've got is Engine Guardian, and the 1-piece is health recovery, which is not vital, but it's a little extra healing. The 2-piece, now this is where it's really interesting. So Engine Guardian has a 25% chance to summon. It's going to give you 1 resource back, so it's either going to be stamina, magicka, or health. If it's stamina or magicka, it's 550 stamina or magicka. If it's a heal, it's 1,955 healing. And it's every half a second for 6 seconds, so it's quite a good amount of resources. You can activate it once every 10 seconds, so it's got 4 seconds where it won't be active, and it has got a high chance to proc at 25%. And it's just by using any ability, so you can use any ability whatsoever. In a fight, it is there most of the time. So this is a very reliable set for gaining resources back. The only problem is you don't have a choice which resource. So it has got a downside, you don't get a choice what resource you're getting. For a couple of tank classes, it doesn't matter if you're getting magicka because you convert that into stamina. But over a duration of a fight, it's going to proc quite nicely. You're going to get some stamina, you're going to get some magicka, you're going to get some healing. So for beginner tanks especially, this is a great set because it's easy to obtain and it's going to give you resources constantly. It activates so much that it's a very, very reliable set, and it's easier to get than some of the other monster sets which give the same thing. So if you're a tank who's struggling to sustain, definitely consider Engine Guardian because it's got a very high uptime. Next we've got Grundwulf. It's got weapon crit, spell crit as the one piece. Now weapon crit, spell crit isn't a bad thing for some builds. Night Blades, for example, when you crit a target you'll proc your group buff, so that's not a bad thing to have that. You will also increase your crit healing, so again not a terrible thing. And then the 2-piece bonus is where it's most interesting. So if you're able to complete this particular dungeon, so Moongrave Fane, then this is a very good monster set to use because you will restore Magicka and Stamina. So you restore 700 Magicka or Stamina, whichever one's like higher. So generally it'll be Stamina. Other resource, you'll also gain 350. This can be activated every 5 seconds. So every 5 seconds you could gain 700 Stamina, 350 Magicka. So this is quite a really good set. So you'll get plenty of critical damage from keeping down your blockade on the ground. You get plenty of criticals from your taunting, your heroic slash. All those sorts of things are going to crit at some point. And it's quite easy to get a crit once every 5 seconds, even with your low crit chance as a tank. But if you are really struggling for sustain and you're able to complete this particular dungeon, there's some situations where this might be really useful, and this is probably the best set for sustain as a tank. Lord Warden is the next set, so the one piece gives you 1487 armor, which means it gives you that amount of spell and physical resistance. When you take damage, you've got a 50% chance to summon a Shadow Orb. So this is a group buff because this spawns with an orb that floats in the air and it has a blue ring on the ground, and everybody stood inside it is going to get 3,180 resistances. It's got a 10-second uptime and it can occur every 10 seconds. So basically, you could have this active all the time. It's got a 50% chance to be active. So every other hit essentially is going to proc it. So it's always going to be there. You can fully rely on this set to keep resistances on your group and on yourself. In fights where you're stacked and close to your group, as a main tank, it's good. But quite often it'll be more the off tank that's in the group. So you might use this on an off tank if your group really needs those resistances to keep that inside the group. If you personally are struggling for resistances, you're taking a lot of damage, your resistances are quite low, you could use this. Just make sure that you're not going over the 33,000 resistance cap. It's a hard cap. So if you're over 33,000 resistances and this then procs and it's extra on top of that, this isn't going to do anything. It's basically useless. So just make sure you're not over the resistance cap if you're going to use this set. Next we've got Malubeth. This set is a strange one. So the one piece gives you max health, which is quite nice for a tank. The 2-piece gives you a 10% chance to create a beam that steals 5715 health over 4 seconds. While the beam is active, you gain major vitality, which increases your healing received by 30%. And this lasts 4 seconds and can occur every 6 seconds. The problem with this set is you can't control when it's active. A 10% chance to activate the set means that you can't control it, so you're not going to get the major vitality when you want it. You need to be in a situation where you're taking a lot of damage. So Kind's Aegis hard mode last boss, where you're taking huge amounts of damage, this set would be potentially useful for that. The only problem you've got is that it's got quite a low uptime. So from the situations where I've seen it be used, most people get a 30 to 35% uptime. At best, if you're extremely lucky with how it procs, you might get it up to a 50% uptime. So if it's at 30% uptime, you've got 70% of the fight where it's not there. Often, if you're unlucky, you might not have it when you need it, but other times it'll be there and it'll be giving you that buff when you do need it. So it's really something that it's up to you whether you're going to use this or not, because it is a bit unreliable, but it is a very big buff. The major vitality is quite a lot. 30% extra healing, as well as the healing that you're already getting on top of that. is quite nice. So it's up to you whether you choose to use this set or not, but it's not fully reliable and it's uncontrollable as to when it's activated. Mighty Chudan. So this is a set that gives a armor buff, a health buff, and then major resolve at all times. So you don't need to use an armor buff like balance or hardened armor or anything like that. It's going to give you that permanently, so you can take that ability off your bar. The problem with this set is that it's very, very selfish and unnecessary to a certain degree. So there is some situations where you might really like the extra bar space. You might struggle to keep the uptime on your major resolve if you're a beginner tank. This is more in the sort of beginner section for tanking. It's not really a super useful set. Sentinel of Rkugamz. Now this set is probably going to be more useful now with the changes to Symphony of Blades. So if your group needs sustain, this is how you're going to deliver that as a tank, most likely. If you're not using Symphony of Blades, this is the set you'll use to help your group sustain. So the one piece gives increased healing done, and the two piece, when you heal yourself or an ally, you summon a Dwemer Spider, and it heals for 1000 health, restores 125 magicka and stamina to you and everybody else who's within 5 meters. As an off tank, this is quite useful. You'll probably be using Blood Altar to proc this. You could use Orbs, you could use Echoing Vigor, you could use a self heal as long as you stood with the group, if you want to give this as a group buff. So you could use this as a selfish set as well as a tank if you're struggling for sustain and you want a little extra healing. It's got an 8-second uptime, and then it can happen every 15 seconds. After it's activated, it can reactivate again after 7 seconds, which isn't too bad. It's quite a nice uptime. It's around 50%. You can get it quite reliably. It's definitely a set that you should think about using as a tank if you're trying to help your group sustain. Even if you're not trying to help your group sustain, but you're near to the group, you can use it to activate on yourself, but also help out your group. The next set we've got is Shadowrend. So the one piece is Magicka Recovery, which is really nice. As a tank, like Magicka Recovery is very, very useful. So you could use this two piece as well. It gives a nice little debuff to enemies, which will decrease the amount of damage that an enemy does by 5%. So when you take damage, you have a 15% chance to summon a Clanfear for 15 seconds. When the Clanfear does damage, it reduces the target damage done by 5%, and this can stack with other things that reduce damage. So your Heroic Slash that causes minor maim, you can combine both of these together to reduce damage even further. So this is a separate damage reduction debuff to an enemy, and obviously it reduces the enemy's damage that it does to everybody. So it's not just to one individual person, not just to the tank, it's to everybody. So it's another 5% damage reduction, and this would be used either by a main tank who doesn't need to run anything else, or maybe the off tank. Sometimes it could be used by a healer as well in a situation where everybody's taking damage. The next set we've got is Stonekeeper. So Stonekeeper, one piece gives you basically a spread of resources, magicka, stamina and health. It's not a massive amount of magicka, stamina and health, so if you don't need the 603 health, you'd be better off using Swarm Mother for the one piece. So if you're looking for a one piece set that gives good stats, you'd be better off with Swarm Mother. 1096 stamina, 1096 magicka versus the 500, 600 magicka and stamina that you get there. So Swarm Mother would be better generally if you don't need that extra little bit of health. You would get a lot more magicka and stamina, double almost the magicka and stamina that you get from Stonekeeper. The two piece, when you block an attack, you gain a charge stack. When you gain 6 charges, it releases the energy to give you 2,480 stamina magicka and healing you for 2,480. This is another sustain set, but the main issue with this sustain set is the fact that you have to build up the charges. So you have to be getting hit to build up those charges. On a boss fight that hits once every 5 seconds, you've got to gain 6 charges, and if you're only being hit every 5 seconds, it's going to take a considerable amount of time to build up the 6 charges. So 30 seconds just to build up the charges, and it's got a 14-second downtime, so you can't gain any more charges for 14 seconds. So once you've built up the 6 charges, you then can't gain any for that 14 seconds. So you're sitting there for quite a while and being not able to build them up, not able to get any of the resources. This is the only monster set that gives you everything: health, magicka and stamina. If you're really struggling and you're permanently blocking all the time and you're in a fight where you're getting hit quite a bit, then obviously this is going to be quite useful. But it's not the easiest monster set to obtain either. It's obtained from veteran Frostfall, so not the easiest one to get. That's quite a difficult dungeon if you're a beginner player, and this is more orientated towards a beginner player, which requires you to be blocking a lot and getting quite a lot of hits. So I would much prefer to use Engine Guardian or Grundwulf over this particular set, because they are much quicker to activate, much more reliable. This is much slower, but on a fight where you're getting hit a lot, because it gives a spread of everything. Swarm Mother. Now we've already mentioned the one piece, so the one piece gives you 1096 stamina and magicka, which is quite a lot. So you could use this as a one piece. You could use this combined with other one pieces to get some nice extra stats. The two piece from this is viable for any class tank that doesn't have a reliable chain. And if you're doing kind of dungeons and things like that where you can't afford the sustain of using something like Silverleash, which uses your stamina, you could use Swarm Mother, because you can stand there and block. You can range taunt the enemies, so you're basically chaining everything with magicka, because you're range taunting all the ranged enemies. That's using your magicka, and then this is activating every 1 second to chain anything that hits you. But the things have got to hit you from a distance with a projectile, so it's got to be either by some kind of bow attack or magic attack from range for you to be able to pull things in. So it's not the easiest set to use, it's not as reliable as using a chain, but if you're in a dungeon and you're struggling for the sustain of something such as Silverleash and you're on a class that doesn't have a very good chaining ability, then this is an option that you could use. Symphony of Blades is the next set, 4% healing done on the one piece, and then the two piece, when you heal an ally that is under 50% of their primary resource, you basically give them 570 magicka or stamina every second for 6 seconds. This can be activated on every single person in your group at the same time if they meet those requirements. So you heal them and they're under 50% of their magicka or stamina. It's got an 18-second cooldown on each individual person, so you can activate on one person, then it can activate on the next person, and then the next person, then the next person. It's an individual cooldown, so this is a really good set for sustain, because one person uses it. You only need one person in the group to use it. More than one person is wasted because the other person isn't going to get the use out of it. The only time you'd use this as a tank is if somebody else is not using it. So the main tank might use it, but generally wouldn't. An off tank would use it if nobody else is using it, definitely. And you'd proc it by using Blood Altar, or potentially Orbs or Echoing Vigor. But Blood Altar is definitely the most reliable way to proc it. This is the best set for giving group sustain, and like I say, it's activated individually, so everybody can have access to it. And this is why you generally wouldn't want to run it on the main tank, because quite often the main tank might need the resources if they're trying to keep up Stone Giant, or you want this available to the main tank most of the time as well. The next set we've got is Thurvokun, and one piece gives you max health, which is nice for a tank. The two piece is basically going to give an area of effect, mine and maim, which is why we would use this as a PvE tank. It's quite a good set if you're in a fight with a lot of ads. You need to get this activated onto the ads. It's a pool that appears on the floor like a green smoky pool, and it spreads over the duration, and it will cause minor maim to everything stood in it. So on any trial or any dungeon with a lot of ads and a lot of hard hitting targets, it's going to be difficult for you to minor maim everything with abilities. So you could use this monster set to do that, and it is quite useful for most of those trials and situations where you need it. It creates the pool on the floor for 8 seconds. Once it disappears, the enemies have then got it for 4 seconds after that. So it's got, and then it can be activated every 16 seconds. So it's got a downtime of 4 seconds basically. The main problem is it procs off you taking damage. So as soon as you take a hit from an enemy, this is active and it's on the ground. And then once it's activated on the ground, you've got to wait 16 seconds again. So if you take a hit and you're not in the right location to where all your enemies are going to be stacked, it's going to proc in a different location to where it should have done. So you've got to be very careful because of the long downtime now. So 16 seconds you're going to be waiting if this activates in the wrong place. So if you walk towards an enemy, it hits you, and then you're running to go and make a stack, it's going to have activated in the previous location. You're going to be sitting there waiting 16 seconds for it to be used again. So you've got to be very careful. And sometimes you might need this for both the main tank and the off tank in a trash pull to use this, just so you can guarantee that it's definitely going to be in the location that it needs to be, or else it's just going to be wasted every time. The next set we've got is Tremorscale. Now this is absolutely vital for stamina groups. If you're in a group with stamina DDs, I would say 2 or more stamina DDs, you will need this set. And the reason for that is when you taunt an enemy, Dune Ripper comes out the ground, does damage. The main thing it does, it reduces the physical resistance by 2,395 for 8 seconds, and it can happen every 8 seconds, so it's 100% uptime potential if you taunt an enemy every 8 seconds. What this means for stamina DDs is they can remove around 36 champion points from their physical penetration and place them in other areas to increase their damage. So it's going to increase their damage by a couple of thousand DPS just by switching those champion points around and by you running this set. And this is not a named buff as well, so this stacks with other stuff. This stacks with your Major Fracture, this stacks with your Alkosh, this stacks with every other type of physical resistance reducing abilities and gear. So this is an extremely important set, but only for stamina groups. It's not spell resistance, so it won't work in a Magicka group. It's useless in a Magicka group, so you wouldn't use that for that. But if you're in a stamina group, you absolutely need to use this on the main tank. The off tank would also need this in any fight where you split into 2 groups. So on more of Lurkaj, where you've got 2 bosses, or on Halls of Fabrications where you've got the triplets, you would need this on both tanks so it's active on both targets at the same time. Troll King, 4% healing done, and when you heal yourself or an ally that is still below 50% health, the health recovery is increased by 925 for 10 seconds. So this is good for mostly only situations where you might be out on your own. Cloud Rest, where you go in the portals. Now this is a real nice thing for Cloud Rest portals when you combine it with all the other sources of health recovery, such as food and potions that give you increased health recovery or healing over time. This is quite a nice thing to combine into that, so you've got a lot of incoming heals. You can get your kind of health recovery up to about 4k in normal tank sets just by setting up with the right food and potions in this particular monster set. The last monster set we're going to look at is Vykosa. This does 4% healing taken, and when you bash an enemy you've taunted, you basically lower their weapon and spell damage by 20%. So if you're in a high damage trial and you want to reduce the damage the enemy does for a specific mechanic, because it's only got 5-second duration, something like Sunspire when you get the Dragon's Breath, or Asylum Sanctorium where you've got the Heavens mechanic, or the fire, the jumps, you could bash the target that you've got taunted. That'll reduce their weapon and spell damage by 20%, and it's just going to reduce the damage for everybody. So it's a nice set. Just if you're taking a lot of damage, you want to lower that amount of damage, you could use this set. The way this set works is multiplicative. This isn't a named buff. You can use this alongside Minor Maim and other things like that. The way this works though, it's not additive, so you're not going to get 20% and 15% from your heroic slash. So it's good, but the more things that you add on to a boss to reduce its damage, the less effective this is. So if you've got Shadowrend as well, you've got this, you've got Major Maim, you've got Minor Maim, you've got lots and lots of damage reduction, this set isn't going to reduce 20% of its damage, it's just lowering the weapon and spell damage, so it gets lower and lower. The effectiveness of this set reduces the more things that you add in, because it's not additive. So just be wary of that. If you're going to use this, you don't want to incorporate too much other damage reduction, or it's going to have less and less effect, and you'd probably be better off using a different monster set. Finally, we've got the option of no monster set. So as a main tank this patch, you don't need a monster set, because Symphony now procs on everyone. Last patch, before Greymoor, you didn't have really many other options. Symphony was the best set to use for a tank because it was proccing one person and you wanted to give the resources. Now it's not, and one person can use that. You've got a few people using Sentinel, so you could use Mythic Items. So you could use the Bloodlord's Embrace. You could use... So you've got the Bloodlord's Embrace, you could use that if you're really struggling. Check out my other video for more information on the Bloodlord's Embrace. You've got the Snow Treaders, which makes you immune to snares and immobilizations. You might also choose not to use a monster set and to use a weapon set. So you've got something like the Puncturing Remedy set, which is the master weapons. This gives you a really, really big heal every time you taunt. It also gives you spell and physical resistance. Check out my other video for that one as well. There's more information on that. I'll post the link in the description. So that is it for the monster sets, guys. It really is up to you what monster set you decide to use this patch for tanking, especially for the main tank. The off tank will have to use whatever the group kind of needs, but you have got more options for the main tank now. If you need a sustain set, use a sustain set. If you need a healing set, use a healing set. If you want to help your group out, then you're going to use a group buff set. But it really is kind of down to your particular group and what your group needs and what you need, because you're far better off using a 2-piece selfish monster set than losing main 5-piece group buffing sets that you're supposed to use. So use a monster set instead of switching out your 5-piece sets, which are really helpful for your group. Let me know in the comments below what you think. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.